Wonder Woman walked to the transporter on the Justice League satellite. Supergirl had been kidnapped by a villain known as the Nurse. It was Wonder Woman's job to rescue her and put the nurse behind bars. Wonder Woman closed her eyes and instantly appeared outside a small building, where they suspected was the nurse's lair. She walked inside and took a look around. She noticed rooms on each side of a long hallway. Wonder Woman looked inside the rooms and noticed people in them who appeared to be sleeping. The rooms looked like hospital rooms, but there were cute little duckies and birds painted on the walls that made her think the rooms were for newborns. She didn't see Supergirl in any of the rooms. Wonder Woman went to the end of the hallway and took the stairs up to the next level, which was largely the same as the first. Wonder Woman searched around further and discovered a secret passage underground. She went down the steps and walked into a large room with multiple cribs in it. Standing over one of them was the nurse. The nurse turned and saw Wonder Woman almost immediately. "Ah, there you are, Wonder Woman," the nurse said, smiling. "What have you done with Supergirl?" Wonder Woman yelled, getting straight to business. "Come and look," the nurse said as she gestured to one of the cribs. Wonder Woman ran to the crib and looked down. There Supergirl was, laying in the crib clad in nothing but a visibly dirty diaper and a tight Supergirl shirt. She had her thumb in her mouth and was sleeping soundly. "What have you done to her?" Wonder Woman said, horrified. "I've simply given her a small dose of my medicine. She doesn't have a care in the world." "But, why would you do this to her? What do you have against the Justice League?" Wonder Woman asked. "I believe that humans are more relaxed when they're innocent and carefree, just like a baby, so I've made a medicine to reduce an adult's mind back to that innocent state. Sure, it has some drawbacks, like incontinence, but nothing that won't be hard to deal with. As for the Justice League, well, I had to make sure it worked on people from other planets such as Supergirl." Wonder Woman thought of what this could mean for the world and decided she must stop the nurse before it was too late. Wonder Woman took out her lasso and threw it towards the nurse, but it got caught on one of the beams and wouldn't budge. Wonder Woman desperately tried to yank the rope down, but it was no use. Wonder Woman then let go of the rope and ran towards the nurse. The nurse was expecting this and had installed a contraption in the floor that dropped victims into the prison below. Wonder Woman walked over the trapdoor as it opened and fell down into the cell. The nurse looked down to see an unconscious Wonder Woman lying inside a giant crib cleverly positioned under the trapdoor. Then the nurse's machines went to work. Giant arms came down from the walls and undressed Wonder Woman, leaving her naked. Then the arms shaved Wonder Woman's pussy and powdered her. An oversized baby diaper was then taped up under Wonder Woman. A pacifier was then placed in her mouth and a small needle injected the nurse's precious medicine into Wonder Woman's adult body. Inside Wonder Woman's body the medicine was beginning to work. First the bladder muscle was severely weakened until it could no longer control itself. The first outward sign that the medicine was working was the yellow wet spot that formed on Wonder Woman's diaper. The nurse smiled when she saw it. Then the medicine worked its way into the bowels, making it impossible for Wonder Woman to control them. A brown bulge formed on the back of the diaper to accompany the soggy yellow in the front of it. The medicine wasn't done yet. It traveled up to Wonder Woman's brain and pleasure centers. The medicine made Wonder Woman less nervous and all around happier with something in her mouth, in this case a pacifier. It also made Wonder Woman's arms and legs hard to control, rendering her strength almost useless. The medicine had been perfectly engineered for superheroines and normal women alike and worked perfectly. In a matter of seconds Wonder Woman's body was brought back to, in terms of control, that of a baby. The nurse pressed a button and Wonder Woman's crib moved into one of the hospital rooms and the doors were locked shut. Wonder Woman lay there for a while before gradually regaining consciousness. The first thing Wonder Woman noticed when she woke up was that she was definitely not in her room on the Justice League satellite. The next thing she noticed was the bars surrounding her bed, or as she would soon realize, crib. Wonder Woman felt sort of groggy and her head hurt. She wrinkled her nose at the smell she just discovered was all around her and moved over. A distinct crinkle told her that something was wrong. Wonder Woman looked down at what she was wearing to find that she wasn't wearing a shirt or bra. She was completely naked from the waist up. And not only that, she didn't feel like she was wearing her typical panties or costume on her lower half either. Wonder Woman reached down to feel what she was wearing, but what she felt wasn't cotton or cloth like she thought it was, but something different. She moved her hand along the garment and heard it crinkle. She then realized that she was clad in a baby diaper. Wonder Woman's eyes widened when she realized that not only was she wearing a diaper, she was wearing a wet one. Her cheeks blushed bright red. "I must have wet myself in my sleep or something," she said to herself, thoroughly embarrassed that as an adult she couldn't control her bladder. Her nose wrinkled again at the smell of, what was that smell? She realized she also felt a strange squishy mass clinging to the back of her rump, secured in place by the diaper. Then she put the two and two together. She got out from under the covers and looked at the diaper and saw the brown lump in the back. Gross, she thought as she realized she had messed herself as well. She moved her hand to the straps on the diaper to take it off, but for some reason her grip wasn't there. She just could not get the diaper off. She tried to plain tear it off, but she wasn't strong enough to. She found it strange, and then looked up at the room around her to try and figure out what happened. She didn't remember much, only that she was on a mission and somehow ended up in a diaper that she couldn't take off. She was stuck in an oversized baby room in an oversized baby crib. Wonder Woman was then aware that there was a pacifier in her mouth and that she was sucking on it. She was able to take it out, but as soon as she did she felt upset, like she wanted to cry. Wonder Woman decided it was best just to leave it in her mouth. She lay there for a while trying to remember when the door opened and a nurse came walking into the room. Wonder Woman quickly hid herself under the blanket. If anyone saw her like this, her career could be over. "Oh, it's okay, Wonder Woman, I'm just here to change you. Even big girls need help sometimes," said the nurse, smiling. Wonder Woman looked up and her covers were torn off. The nurse then pressed a button and the bars in the crib came down. The nurse untaped the diaper and threw it away. The nurse reached down and took out a baby wipe. "You're a messy, messy girl, Wonder Woman," the nurse said as she wiped her down. Wonder Woman didn't really remember how she got here or why she suddenly couldn't control her bodily functions, but she did know that somehow she got here, and until she knew what was going on, she shouldn't do anything she might regret. Plus, Wonder Woman wasn't so sure she had the strength to do anything about her situation. She decided to rest up and try to get her strength and memory back. She blushed and allowed the nurse to change her diaper without saying much. She was powdered and a brand new diaper was pulled up under her and taped in. Her mother always said she had trouble getting potty trained. Of course, at the age of 30 you would think she would have learned. There you go. All set for breakfast in a brand new diaper, the nurse said, patting Wonder Woman's diaper. "Thanks," Wonder Woman said softly. She was still sleepy and confused, and a little embarrassed. Wonder Woman's crib then transformed into some kind of high chair. Wonder Woman was surprised by the level of technology this place had, but of course if she was somewhere on the JLA satellite. She was fed a disgusting pulp and then put in an adult-sized playpen. Wonder Woman soon realized something wasn't normal. If she did indeed have a medical condition, that would explain her weakness and inability to control her bodily functions. It could also explain the pulp she ate, as she might not be able to process solid foods. But the one thing that didn't fit was the playpen. Wonder Woman heard her stomach rumble loudly. "Ah!" Wonder Woman muttered as she put her hand on her abdomen. Her stomach wasn't handling the food very well. She looked around the playpen and noticed stuffed bears and horses. She reached out for the bear and looked at it. Perhaps they were monitoring devices. Why else would they put the animals in there? As Wonder Woman thought harder, she realized it was becoming increasingly more likely she was in an unfriendly place. She could be in big trouble right now. Perhaps she had been given some sort of drug to weaken her and make her a prisoner? If she really was in enemy territory, the Justice League would surely come to her rescue. She had a tracker on her in case something happened. But then Wonder Woman came to another conclusion. In the state I'm in right now, do I really want to be found? She could never live it down if the word got out that Wonder Woman wasn't potty trained. Blat. Wonder Woman let out a loud fart into her diaper. She just couldn't hold it in anymore. Before she could think to try and call a nurse to get her to the bathroom, her bowels were pushing out the load. As Wonder Woman blushed bright red, a brown mass burst out of her and into the back of the diaper. She gasped as the back of the diaper was loaded with the remains of her breakfast. She reached down and felt the added bulk to the diaper. She couldn't believe she had messed herself. She was an Amazon. She wasn't a baby. She looked down at the fluffy diaper around her bottom and saw that she had wet herself as well without noticing. As if on cue, the nurse came in to change her. Did someone make a stinky? The nurse asked, smiling. The nurse pressed a button and giant arms came out from the walls, picking up Wonder Woman and laying her onto a changing table. The nurse took off Wonder Woman's dirty diaper and wiped her down. Then she began powdering Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was still shocked about what had just happened and didn't have much to say, but she was able to mutter a few words. What happened to me? Wonder Woman asked, worried. She was, after all, an adult woman and shouldn't be having incontinence issues. Oh, nothing, sweetie. The nurse replied. Some Amazons like you are just big babies on the inside. All I had to do was bring that out. The nurse had just finished taping up the diaper when Wonder Woman jumped off the table. Wonder Woman knew something was off, and she just realized what. She was in the nurse's lair, and most certainly was being given the nurse's medicine. Wonder Woman felt a little stronger and was able to stand up and move her arms. The medicine was wearing off, no doubt, and the nurse was probably about to give her a second dose. Clad in nothing but a diaper, Wonder Woman made a break for the door. The nurse pressed the button to lock the door, but Wonder Woman had already opened it. Damn, I knew I should have given her another dose earlier. The nurse muttered, running after Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman ran as fast as she could, and picked up her costume on the way. She hurried down the steps and put on her bra. She ran towards the entrance of the building and ducked into the weapons room to retrieve the rest of her gear. The nurse wasn't far behind, but she knew she wasn't fast enough to catch up to the incontinent superhero. Wonder Woman got on her suit and dived out through the door. She still didn't have the energy to fly, but she could run. Wonder Woman ran towards the city and ducked into a nearby restaurant. It was only then that she realized she didn't take off her diaper. Wonder Woman went into the restroom and reached down to take the diaper off. It was wet. What? Wonder Woman exclaimed when she realized she was still incontinent. She began to think that maybe the medicine, having fully worn off by now, left her permanently incontinent. Wonder Woman decided to leave the diaper on. She looked in the mirror and immediately noticed the bulk it added to her crotch area and around her butt. It was obvious she was wearing a diaper. She decided that it wouldn't matter. All she had to do was teleport back to the JLA satellite and make some sort of medicine to combat the incontinence. Computer, teleport me back to the satellite. Wonder Woman said, and she was immediately placed back on the JLA satellite. Wonder Woman then began hurrying to the lab to find a cure for her incontinence. She got into the lab to be analyzed and the doctors there examined her. They took a blood sample and looked at what Wonder Woman had been given. It seems to be some sort of muscle-debilitating parasite. It targets the bladder and bowels specifically. The doctor explained. It should wear off in about 6 months or so. 6 months? Wonder Woman exclaimed. I can't wear diapers for 6 months. "I'm afraid there isn't anything we can do," said the doctor sympathetically. "Feel free to come in here for changes if you like." "I can change myself, thank you," Wonder Woman said, frustrated and annoyed. She stormed out of the lab and got into her room before anyone could see her. So she was back in diapers for 6 whole months. How was she going to fight crime when she couldn't even use the potty? And Supergirl was still in the nurse's lair. What was Wonder Woman going to do? Chapter 2. On the Justice League satellite, Wonder Woman is sitting in her room wearing a rather bulky diaper. Wonder Woman wasn't sure what to do about this change of pace. She needed diapers for the next 6 months until the formula the nurse had given her wore off, but she had no idea how to go about fighting crime in this bulky, protective undergarment, as the lab people called it. As she sat there thinking, she noticed one of her older costumes hanging up in her room. Suddenly a solution came to her. A simple costume change would do. If she changed her costume that she was wearing a skirt, then perhaps she would be able to hide the diaper she was wearing underneath. Wonder Woman got to work converting her costume. When she finished, she slipped it on and checked the mirror. The diaper was barely noticeable, only someone looking for it would notice. She began thinking of what to do about the nurse. She paced back and forth inside the room. She wasn't used to the thickness of the diaper. She vaguely remembered wearing diapers when she was first created, but it was a distant feeling she had, for the most part, forgotten. As she looked in the mirror, she noticed that the diaper was so thick it made her waddle a little bit when she walked. She silently hoped no one would notice. After much thought, Wonder Woman decided that she should talk to John, or Martian Manhunter, about the nurse. She silently crept out of her room and headed towards the center of the satellite where John was. As Wonder Woman approached, Martian Manhunter sensed her. "I notice your mission to bring back Supergirl has yet to be completed. John, you know I don't give up easily. Originally I was counting on breaking her out and, together, taking down the nurse. What happened? I've underestimated the nurse. She has the capability of sapping powers. I barely made it out myself. Perhaps if you had help you could accomplish your mission." "Possibly. I will send Superman with you. He has just finished his last mission. We need you to go get Supergirl out. We need her back here before we make any other decisions." "What should we do about the nurse?" "If you can capture her, then do so. But the number one priority is Supergirl. Get onto the transport beam and I'll send you down to where Superman is waiting. By John. Farewell, Diana." As Wonder Woman left, Martian Manhunter thought he heard a small crinkling sound, but dismissed it, thinking it absurd. He watched Wonder Woman beam down and wished her luck. She was going to need every bit of it. Wonder Woman arrived near the nurse's lair in an instant. As she looked around, she noticed Superman standing outside of a small shop. They were in a small city late at night and very few people were awake. Superman was looking around for a hospital that might contain the nurse, having no luck. "Clark, it's over here," Wonder Woman told him, gesturing towards a deceptively small unmarked building. "This building looks almost the same as all the others. Are you sure this is it, Diana?" Superman said, doubtful. "I've been there, Clark. I think I would know where it is," Wonder Woman retorted. They walked over to it. Superman opened the door and glanced inside. It was dark and there was no movement. "That's odd, these walls contain lead." "The nurse was expecting us," Superman said, disturbed. They silently walked down the hallway and down the stairs. Wonder Woman and Superman proceeded to search the rooms, all seeming to be vacant. Wonder Woman thought she heard a noise coming from a room at the end of the hallway. She quickly waddled over while Superman was searching another room. "Great Hero! Clark, come in here!" Wonder Woman yelled, shocked. Supergirl was bound to a crib with Wonder Woman's golden lasso. She was struggling with the magical rope when Wonder Woman entered the room. Supergirl was clad in only a diaper, with a pacifier in her mouth. Supergirl tried covering herself up to no avail. What? What happened? Superman said, running across the hall. It's Supergirl, she's here. Wonder Woman replied, pulling out the pacifier and covering Supergirl with a blanket. Superman walked into the room. Kara. Thank goodness you're okay. I was worried about you. Superman said, seeing Supergirl. You two took your time getting here. Supergirl said, annoyed. Wonder Woman, can you help me with this stupid lasso of yours? Wonder Woman began untangling Supergirl and Superman persisted with his questions. So now that we have Kara, where is the nurse? Superman asked. The nurse knew you both were coming back to get me and left. Supergirl replied. Do you know where she went? Did she mention any plans to you at all? Clark asked, hopeful. No, not to me at least, although perhaps something was mentioned to Diana. Supergirl replied, gesturing to Wonder Woman. Yes, the nurse said she had developed some sort of special formula that Wonder Woman struggled for words, debilitates people. What exactly does it do? Clark asked, a little confused. Supergirl had a good guess that Wonder Woman had also been given that treatment, but Superman was most likely unaware of the situation. Supergirl was still covered by the blanket and quite thankful that Wonder Woman found her before Superman did, sparing her further embarrassment. She was untangled and let out of the oversized crib. Her clothes were found in the room's closet, and Supergirl went inside the bathroom to change, leaving Wonder Woman and Superman to talk. The nurse's formula reduces adults' minds to a more infantile state. It weakens the muscles and debilitates its victims, even superhumans. Wonder Woman said, answering Superman's earlier question. So if the nurse used it on the general population, the people wouldn't be able to survive, Superman reasoned. Not exactly, Clark, the formula is strange. The formula debilitates, yes, but only for a short while. It must be administered again and again to maintain that effect, so it's more of a temporary thing. Wonder Woman explained. So the nurse would have to find a way to suppress people enough to be able to reapply the formula. Yes, but that's not all. The formula has some long-term effects as well. How long-term are we talking? I'm not sure. 6 months at least, maybe longer. So what is it? Well, some muscle groups don't really hold up as well against this formula as others do. Wonder Woman guessed, for example, some of the more nether regions. What do you mean, Diana? I mean, more specifically, the bladder and bowels. So every citizen who is given a dose of this formula becomes incontinent. Yes, it would appear so. Supergirl came out of the bathroom at that moment as if on cue. Wonder Woman and Superman glanced over and Superman gave her a weird look. Supergirl was wearing her normal costume with the skirt cleverly concealing the diaper underneath. It was apparent by the odd look on Superman's face that he now knew what Supergirl was wearing. Fortunately, Superman had yet to notice Wonder Woman's new choice of undergarment, and Wonder Woman wanted to keep it that way. Supergirl was given no such privacy. Superman turned back to Wonder Woman. How very strange. Why would the nurse want this? What's her motivation? Superman asked. From what she told me, the nurse believes that humanity is better off in a more innocent, infantile state. Wonder Woman answered, she'll do anything it takes to get that. If she can weaken the population through this formula, may the gods help us. Then we need to find her and stop her before it's too late. Search the rest of the building, see if we can find any evidence of where she's gone. Superman said, motivation in his eyes. They split up and Wonder Woman searched throughout a lower floor, finding only empty rooms. Soon she reached the last room on the floor and, ready to give up and reunite with the others, she almost missed a clue. In the room, there was a small note on the wall. Clark. Kara. Come down here. I think I found something, Wonder Woman yelled. Superman and Supergirl hurried down to meet Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman held the note up for them to read. Hello, Justice League members. I have very good news for you all. Soon you, and the rest of Metropolis, will be in utter bliss. A state of pure innocence and happiness that will leave you more joyful and carefree than you could possibly imagine. It will be a sweet way to end your adult lives and start a new, better life. A couple of you have already gotten a taste of this bliss I speak of, and, if you're smart, you won't try to stop me. Best wishes. The Nurse. Chapter 3. Martian Manhunter was at his post, watchful as ever, when he received a message from Wonder Woman. She mentioned that there was a note left by the nurse in the building and that they had rescued Supergirl. Martian Manhunter thought about this for a while. He knew that there was no way for the nurse to evacuate so many people in such a limited amount of time without leaving evidence. But how was the team going to find such evidence? What they needed was a detective, and he was more than willing to provide them with the best he could offer. Wonder Woman looked at the note a little longer before sealing it in a plastic container. It was evidence, it had to be kept safe. Her earpiece was picking up a call from Martian Manhunter. Diana, I am unconvinced that the building is all that it appears to be. Something more must be there to use to find the nurse. Look, John, we've done everything we can. Clark can't see anything rather unusual about the rooms. It appears that the rooms are simply oversized nurseries. We need someone down here that actually knows what to look for. I understand. I have sent down Bruce for a more thorough investigation. He should be there within the next 3 minutes. Has he been briefed? Yes. Inform me of any information you receive. Good luck. Thanks, John. Wonder Woman headed towards the front of the building to meet up with Batman. As Wonder Woman was walking, she reached down and felt the front of her diaper. Sure enough, it was soaked. She took a quick duck into the bathroom to change. Taking off her skirt, she untaped the yellowed diaper and threw it away. Getting onto the adult changing table, she noticed the necessary changing equipment in cubbies in the wall. Wonder Woman realized that she would, in the future, have to find a way to fit a diaper bag into her costume. She had never changed her own diaper before, and was rather unsure as to how to go about it. Reaching towards the wipes, Wonder Woman wiped her crotch down. Then she took the diaper and laid it down underneath her. Taking baby powder, she powdered herself and then reached down and taped the tapes in place. The diaper fit snugly around her butt and crotch area, exactly her size. Pleased with herself, she put on her skirt and went out to meet Batman. Wonder Woman left the bathroom to find Batman walking into the building. Hello, Bruce. Where are Clark and Kara? Right upstairs, last room on the right. Batman walked ahead of Wonder Woman and went up the stairs and into the room. Upon entering the room, he paid almost no attention to Superman and Supergirl, but merely walked to the crib and began looking underneath. What are you looking for? Superman asked. I'm looking for some sort of crevice or break in the floor. In order to evacuate paralyzed victims out of this building within an hour or two, the nurse would have to have some sort of way of transporting victims while leaving them in their cribs. Judging by the thickness of the ceilings on the lower floors, I believe the victims were transported through a contraption under the floor. Batman answered. Finding no such crevice or break, Batman took out a laser and cut around the crib. I could just use my laser dash. Superman was cut off. The laser cut full circle around the crib, caving in the floor. The ground fell away as if it was made of glass. Batman's reflexes were instant. He grappled up onto the ceiling and watched as Wonder Woman and Kara fell in immediately. Superman grabbed onto a door handle next to him, avoiding the fall, before flying down to see what happened afterwards. You could have warned us that was going to happen, Kara exclaimed, scrambling out from the rubble. The floor was weaker than anticipated. Batman replied, smiling. Wonder Woman landed in an awkward position, inadvertently flashing her diaper to anyone watching. Trying to regain composure, she got up and quickly pulled down her skirt. But Superman had seen enough to know that both Wonder Woman and Supergirl were heavily padded, victims of the nurse's formula. To spare them the embarrassment, Superman said nothing. Batman had no look of shock or disbelief on his face. He simply jumped down from the ceiling and into the hole in the floor. Superman wondered if he had even seen it. The hole gave way to a dark tunnel. This tunnel goes on for miles, Batman stated after a quick scan. It looks to have been here for a long time. It should be already in our database. Batman brought up a map of the area using one of his gadgets. The tunnel itself was an old subway track that had long since been abandoned. The track split in two, one headed for the center of Metropolis, and the other to a rural area further away. It looks like the only way to find which route the nurse took is to split up and search them both. Superman said, "When we find where the nurse has gone, we can call it a night and head home." Wonder Woman and Supergirl both agreed on this, while Batman simply began walking down the tunnel. It's about half a mile until the tunnel splits. Batman said, "We can figure out who's going with who when we get there." As they were walking there, though it was more of a waddle for Wonder Woman and Supergirl, Wonder Woman gave Batman the note. Batman scanned it for fingerprints, but found none. She knows what she's doing. She left no evidence when she wrote this. Batman said, "So you can't identify her?" Wonder Woman asked, disappointed. "No, not yet. But I'm sure by the end of this we'll know who this nurse really is." Batman replied, a hint of motivation in his voice. They arrived at the fork in the tunnel and it was decided that Wonder Woman and Superman would take the tunnel to the rural area, while Supergirl and Batman would head towards the center of Metropolis. Wonder Woman and Superman flew down the tunnel. A couple of minutes later, they reached its end. It opened up into a small rural area, with only one house, barely visible, nearby. If the nurse went here, there's a good chance she's staying in that house, Superman pointed out. Wonder Woman flew over to the house with Superman and opened the door. It was an old cottage with a small animal pen on the side of it. The inside of the house looked like it hadn't been used for years. "I'm not sure, but I think I see something," Superman said, using his X-ray vision. "Some kind of contraption in the fireplace." Wonder Woman got on her hands and knees and looked up the fireplace. She reached up and felt for any kind of lever and, finding one, pulled it. A cool wind swept through the empty house. Wonder Woman felt a draft up her back and quickly backed out from the fireplace and stood up. Realizing her diaper was on full display, Wonder Woman's cheeks blushed bright red. She decided to go with a longer skirt next time. "I pulled a lever in the fireplace," Wonder Woman said. "There must be another lever or something near here." Superman pushed in the mantelpiece on the fireplace with a click. The fireplace turned 90 degrees, revealing a staircase leading underground. Wonder Woman walked inside first. "What do you think she is down here?" Wonder Woman asked Superman, but before Superman could answer, the fireplace turned back around. Instantly the steps folded up and became a ramp. Wonder Woman fell onto her padded bottom and slid down into a dark room. Landing on her ample chest, a thick wall slammed down behind her, sealing off the way in. "Clark! Help! I can't see anything, I'm stuck in here," Wonder Woman yelled, but there was no response. Wonder Woman looked around for a light switch. She reached over to a nearby wall and ran her hand along its side. Finding a protrusion in the wall, she pressed it down. The lights went on all around her, illuminating the area. Wonder Woman was trapped in a small empty room. The ground was a soft, mattress-like material, while the walls were hard metal. The room was empty but for a large screen on the far wall. The screen flickered on, revealing a video of the nurse. "Welcome test subject to my experiment room. Here I test my latest and greatest formulas on unsuspecting subjects like you. Today's test will be a dose of one of my many formulas, Formula 2. Let the experiment commence. The nurse's image flickered away and the screen went blank again. The screen was then lifted away, revealing a vent concealed behind it. Wonder Woman watched helplessly as a strange gas was released into the room. Diana, are you there? Superman yelled, I can't see through these walls. Clark. I'm inside a room near the far wall. Don't go inside until I say it's safe. I don't know what's going on in here. Wonder Woman replied, nervous. Wonder Woman made a valiant attempt to hold her breath, but she was unable to do it for very long. Wonder Woman gasped, taking in much of the gas at once. Hero, give me strength. Wonder Woman said, closing her eyes and fearing for the worst. She lay there for what felt like eternity. Wonder Woman waited for what the formula would bring her, but nothing happened. She got up and walked around. She seemed to be just fine. Come in, Clark. Wonder Woman said, the gas in here has cleared. Superman broke through the wall and came inside. Are you okay, Diana? What happened? Superman asked, worried. It's strange, nothing seemed to happen. Wonder Woman tried to answer, but she stopped. Suddenly Wonder Woman buckled over and fell down. She clutched her stomach and groaned loudly. What? What's going on? Superman said, running over to Wonder Woman. NGHH. Wonder Woman replied. Wonder Woman's stomach was churning furiously. Wonder Woman realized the formula must have been some sort of powerful laxative administered through the air, but the realization came too late. Wonder Woman clenched her butt cheeks together, but was unable to stop the massive surge of poop into the seat of her diaper. The diaper bulged outward, making it quite obvious under her skirt, and became discolored. Superman watched with disbelief as his friend and colleague filled her adult diaper. Wonder Woman gasped for air, but her bowels weren't done yet. Another massive movement added to the load in her diaper, but signaled the end of her messy ordeal. Wonder Woman groaned, exhausted and embarrassed. With all her strength, Wonder Woman tried to get up, leaning against the wall. Her legs could barely close with the huge load in her diaper, and she herself was tired. Wonder Woman collapsed down onto the soft floor. Diana, let me help you. Superman said, his eyes showing sympathy. You don't have to, Clark. I can change myself. Wonder Woman said, shamed and embarrassed. Tell Batman the nurse isn't here. Leave me. Diana, you can't stand, let alone change yourself. Superman replied. I'll go and get supplies, you just stay here, Batman can wait. Wonder Woman lay there, disgusted by the smell of the mess now plastered to her bottom. She lay there wondering how she was going to stop the nurse when she couldn't even control her body. She felt something she hadn't felt in a while, a feeling of being powerless, of being unable to help the League like she should. They had to stop the nurse quick, before anything more embarrassing happened to her, though messing herself in front of a colleague was about as embarrassing as it could get. Wonder Woman was worried she was just weighing her team down. Most of all, she worried about the word getting out, but Superman was someone she trusted, and he wasn't the kind of person that would tell anyone about this incident. She knew it. I'm back, Diana. There was another one of those nurseries downstairs. Superman said, walking into the room with supplies. Superman walked over to Wonder Woman. She lay there and closed her eyes as the diaper was untaped and pulled out from under her. He silently wiped her clean with his soft, gentle hands. She blushed furiously, but still trying not to think about her embarrassing situation. Her mind wandered as Superman powdered her. She hoped Batman and Supergirl had been more successful than she had been. Superman taped up another, thicker diaper around her crotch. All done. Superman said to her, smiling. Ready to go home? Yes. I most certainly am. Wonder Woman replied, relieved. John, beam us up," Superman said, pressing on his earpiece. Superman picked up Wonder Woman and they both disappeared from the room. They reappeared on the JLA satellite, with Superman carrying a exhausted and sleeping Wonder Woman back to her room. He laid her down on her bed and shut the door. "What a night," Superman said, walking down the hall to his room. Chapter 4. Wonder Woman slowly opened her eyes. She was back in her room on the Justice League satellite. As she woke up, she noticed that she had her thumb in her mouth. Wonder Woman quickly pulled it out and sat up. Then she remembered what had happened. She looked down at her diaper. She could feel that it was drenched. She was going to need thicker diapers. She looked in her closet and found a stack of thick and dry diapers. The lab people must have put them there in the night. But how would she be able to carry them in her suit? "Wonder Woman? You there?" a voice said at the door. "1 minute," Wonder Woman replied, hurriedly pulling a diaper out from the stack. She took off her wet diaper and changed herself quickly. Wonder Woman then waddled to the door. It was Supergirl. "We know where the nurse is. Superman and I are going to catch her today and we need your help," Supergirl said. "I'll meet you down there." Wonder Woman replied, "I should only be a minute." Wonder Woman went back into her room. She examined the stack of diapers more closely. They looked like they could be easily folded. Wonder Woman folded one of them up and fitted it into a small pouch. She slipped the pouch on the belt of her suit. She thought it fit in with her suit rather nicely. She went out the door and to the teleport pad. Meanwhile, Superman and Supergirl found themselves at the end of the tunnel from yesterday. "I take it you and Batman found the lair?" Superman inquired. "Yes, at least he thinks he did," Supergirl replied, annoyed. "He saw traces of her fingerprints or something stupid like that. Wonder Woman and I didn't have such an easy time," Superman said, pushing out the memory. Wonder Woman appeared behind them. "Glad you could join us, Diana," Superman replied, showing no memory of their previous encounter. The tunnel opened up into an alleyway formed by 2 buildings. Batman said that the building on the right is where she is now. Supergirl said, pointing to a large skyscraper. "That's one of the tallest buildings in Metropolis." Superman said, "How could she get there?" "I guess we'll have to find out," Wonder Woman replied, waddling over to the door. The building had a new paint smell and boxes lay on the floor. It looked as if the building was being moved into. They decided to check out the other floors for evidence. There was no evidence of the nurse, only mysterious boxes on each floor. They stopped at one floor that had a large number of these boxes. "What do you suppose is in the boxes?" Wonder Woman asked, looking at one of them. "If this really is the nurse's new hiding place, I'm not sure I want to find out," Supergirl replied. "Clark, can you see what's in this box?" Wonder Woman asked. Superman stared into the box. Nothing strange, just a bunch of plastic. "Why would the nurse have boxes of plastic?" Wonder Woman asked, almost to herself. They continued to search each floor until they finally arrived at the last floor at the top of the building. This floor, unlike the others, contained no boxes. Superman walked into the room cautiously. Nothing seemed odd at first, but when Wonder Woman and Supergirl had walked inside, the ceiling began to change. "Clark, look up!" Wonder Woman yelled, "Something is coming out of the ceiling." A platform was slowly descending from the ceiling. The floor underneath them began to change as well. An opening was being created in the floor, right near where Wonder Woman was standing. Wonder Woman fell forward, but Superman quickly grabbed her skirt to pull her back. A ripping sound was heard as Wonder Woman was pulled back to lie on the floor. Her skirt had been partially ripped, falling down to reveal a now sodden diaper underneath. But it appeared as if no one was paying any attention to Wonder Woman, as the nurse stood on the platform now level with the floor of the room. "Hello, Justice League," the nurse said, welcoming them with a devious smile. "I'm afraid you are too late to stop me. You see, I have already distributed my formula to Metropolis. All the women in Metropolis will soon be reduced to mindless infants, a blissful state few can remember. You couldn't have possibly distributed your formula to the entire Metropolis yet," Superman said in disbelief. "Ah, but I have. I was able to get massive doses of the formula Supergirl and Wonder Woman have recently received into the water supply. All I have to do is press this button and the formula will be activated," the nurse said, gesturing towards a button on the platform she was standing on. "Only women are affected by the formula?" Supergirl asked, curious. "I have specifically used them as a test group, soon the men will meet the same fate," the nurse replied, sneering. "Soon I will welcome all into this building to serve as a nursery for those gifted with eternal bliss, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." The nurse reached down to press the button, but not before Superman lunged forward at her. Immediately Superman bounced backwards. "It's some sort of shield," Superman exclaimed. "I always take precautions," the nurse replied, pressing the button firmly. Wonder Woman watched as Supergirl collapsed to the floor next to her. Then Wonder Woman felt her body betray her. Her arms and legs flew helplessly about her. She tried to suppress them, but she only managed to get her thumb in her mouth. Wonder Woman felt the formula attempting to take over her brain, but she fought back. Wonder Woman struggled and saw that Supergirl had already given up, a wide smile slipping onto her face as she filled her diaper. This only made Wonder Woman fight back harder, forcing the formula out of her brain, using her willpower against it. The nurse's platform dropped down through the now opening floors below her. The boxes opened, revealing diapers and changing equipment. Some boxes released a foggy substance into the air, allowing the nurse to get away. But Superman was determined. Having recovered, he dived down after the nurse. A hot pursuit ensued, the nurse reaching the bottom floor with Superman on her tail. She pressed a button in her pocket, revealing a small opening in the floor for which to escape. The nurse almost made it inside, but Superman tackled her, knocking her away. Superman bound the nurse's hands and called for a teleport back to the station. "You're not getting away this time. We'll find a cure, you just wait," Superman replied, vanishing with the struggling nurse. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman was having troubles of her own. She struggled with the effects of the formula, but her strength was dying out. She felt her body begin to push a load into her diaper. She felt the gooey mass slip into the seat of her diaper, squishing itself against her bottom. She tried to keep her mind together, gagging at the smell. Wonder Woman felt the diaper become warm. The feeling felt good. She closed her eyes, ready to give in to the bliss. Superman reappeared beside her, picking her up and transporting her back to the station. He took her to the hospital on the JLA satellite and laid her down. "What do you want us to do for her?" one of the nurses asked. "She needs medicine to help her fight the formula. It might be already too late," Superman replied. "Come this way," the nurse said. "We'll put her in the nursery." "Good, I'll go get Kara," Superman replied, laying Wonder Woman down on a bed. Superman left to go get Supergirl. Wonder Woman felt medicine going into her body. The formula stopped trying to take over her mind. She would remain conscious. She would not slip away like Supergirl did. But as she lay there, sucking her thumb, she realized that if no cure was found, she would remain an infant for the rest of her life. She, unlike the other women, would remain aware of what had happened to her. Wonder Woman smelled her diaper's stench. She felt the mess squish along her butt, the warm feeling fading away. She didn't want everyone to be like this forever. There would be a cure, Wonder Woman knew it. Chapter 5. Superman laid the newly rescued Supergirl down in the nursery next to Wonder Woman. The two grown-up women lay sucking their thumbs in oversized cribs, dressed only in large, bulky, and soggy diapers. Superman wondered how it had come to this. How could all the women of Metropolis be reduced to helpless adult babies with the Justice League watching over them? This seemingly ordinary villain was always one step ahead of the League. But now it would all end, Superman thought. The nurse was now captured and locked away in the prison. Surely she would know the cure to the formula that now plagued the adult females of Metropolis. Superman walked to the containment center to look for the nurse. In one of the cells, a strong, but defeated, nurse lay on the ground. She had been stopped by the Justice League. Her plan had never reached its true fruition. Only half of the intended recipients were affected, and the Justice League had finally caught her and surely would find the cure. The nurse looked up to see Superman walk in, locking the cell behind him. "We need the cure," Superman stated. "Where is it?" "You'll never find it. I hid it far away from here," the nurse replied. "Well, that's too bad, because you're going to be needing it." The panel opened, revealing a large stash of various chemicals, one of which was withdrawn before the panel was closed again. Superman took the container and popped open the top. Forcing open the nurse's mouth, he dropped a pill down her throat, forcing her to swallow. "You have been given a version of your special drug that takes effect over the course of 30 minutes. Superman told the nurse. "If you tell us where the cure is, we might be able to reverse the effects in time. It's your choice." The nurse stared off at an empty wall, paying no attention to the Man of Steel. "I will not undo what has happened to Metropolis, even if my life as an adult depended on it," the nurse said, refusing to look Superman in the eye. "This has been my dream. I wish it to be maintained in my last minutes of consciousness." "Very well," Superman replied, disappointed. Superman left the room, locking the cell behind him. He tapped the radio in his ear. "Bruce, I know you thought you were done with this case, but I need your help," Superman said, talking through the device. After a little delay, he got a response. "What is it that you need me to do?" Batman responded. "I need you to track down and locate the cure. The nurse says she hid it far away, but surely she knew she would be susceptible to the formula as well." Superman said, hopeful. "She would need to have an emergency supply somewhere nearby." Batman reasoned. "If you can find it, we can develop an airborne version to release into the air and cure Metropolis." "I'll do what I can," Batman replied. Batman began his search. In the Batcave, he turned on the Bat computer. Alfred, noticing Master Wayne, came down to assist him. "What exactly are you looking for, sir?" Alfred asked. "The nurse must have some sort of advanced medical degree in order to be able to create a drug like this. I'm running a search on all of the high-performing medical students recently graduated in the area," Batman replied. "What exactly are you hoping to accomplish with that information, if I may ask, Mr. Wayne?" "If we find her true identity, we could use it to track down the cure," Batman responded. After a couple minutes of advanced searching, many students appeared on the screen. The computer identified one of them as matching the description of the nurse. "That's odd, she has a sister who hasn't been affected by the formula," Batman said, searching through the available information. "Perhaps it's a coincidence, sir," Alfred replied. "I wish it was, but there are no coincidences. She's been given the cure," Batman responded. "If her sister wasn't affected by the formula, we could possibly retrieve the cure from her." "Send the coordinates to the Batwing, Alfred. I'm going for a ride." "As you wish, sir," Alfred responded. "Would you like your evening tea before you go?" "No time, Alfred. Maybe once this is all over," Batman responded, climbing into the Batwing. The Batwing took off, flying into the night sky. It came to a hover above a small house just outside the city. A woman looking much like the nurse was inside the house watching a TV story on the situation of Metropolis. Batman swooped down into the house, landing just behind the woman's sofa. "Explain why you're one of the only women still cognizant anywhere near Metropolis," Batman said, surprising the woman. How did you get in here? The woman exclaimed, I'll call the cops. You wouldn't even touch the phone. What do you know about your sister's work? Batman inquired, wasting no time. She doesn't tell me much about what she does. We haven't seen each other for weeks. The woman said, wetting her pajamas out of fear. Every other woman in Metropolis has the mind of a child and you're just fine. Batman glanced at the sodden pajamas. Well, almost. What did she give you to keep you from having the mind of a child? She gave me some pills a month ago. She said they were for my headaches. The woman said, I have some in my bathroom. The wet and shaking woman crawled to the bathroom in her wet clothes and came out with 3 pills in a small bag. She handed them to Batman. These are what she gave me. You can have the rest, I don't need them anyways. The woman replied. Batman disappeared as soon as she turned around, climbing back into the Batwing. Clark, I have the cure. I'm bringing it back to the Justice League satellite. Batman replied. Batman arrived back at the Batcave and transported himself up to the satellite. He moved quickly to the medical center. When he arrived, he gave the scientists 1 pill to reproduce and then headed to the nursery with the other 2. He gave them to the Superman. These should do something to stop the formula from taking hold. The scientists are adapting it right now in the medical center. Batman said, finished with his job. Thanks, Bruce. Superman replied. Don't mention it. Batman said, leaving the room. Baby Timmy. My life in nappies began at the age of 10 and I am now 14. I started having accidents day and night 4 years or so ago. Mum used to get angry and smack me, but it didn't stop, it just got worse. After a series of medical tests it was put down to laziness. So Mum warned me that the very next time I wet or dirtied myself I would be put into nappies. It happened that very same day I wet myself. Mum was mad at me. She took me to town and after visiting various shops she bought cloth nappies, plastic pants, pins, baby cream, plus she bought trainer pants, disposable nappies and blue backpack. We went back to car and then home. I was then put back to nappy and plastic pants. I was then sent to my room mainly because I was crying and telling my mum I wouldn't wear them. Mum came up about an hour later and asked if I had got over my childish tantrum. I didn't answer but nodded. She then ordered me to stand up and pull my jeans down. I just looked at her so she pulled them down herself. Good, she said, you still have it on. I was then given new rules on how things were going to be. Life went on pretty much like this for months. Then last summer everything changed. I broke up from school and came home. I was called to my room, my bed and everything was gone, replaced with a large cot, a large high chair and changing table, plus all the other baby things you can think of. I was told I was going to regress to a 2-year-old for the rest of the summer if needed. This was due to my still wetting and on top of that a poor school report and generally getting into trouble. I was told to undress. I obeyed and stood in just my nappy and plastic pants. After being changed I was put into a yellow baby grow and told that was my new attire, pinned on was a dummy. I was then taken downstairs and put into a large playpen and told to play with the toys. When Mum left the room I cried, I wasn't sure what was happening. Mum came back in and shoved the dummy in mouth, which I spat out. For that I lifted from then playpen, put across her lap and smacked. Babies need to learn, I was told, then put back into the pen. At dinner time I was put into high chair and spoon-fed baby food, then a bottle. At 6 o'clock I was taken upstairs and undressed, then bathed and put back into nappy and plastic pants and a baby grow and put to bed in the cot. Firstly, you will have your nappy checked and changed every 2 to 3 hours, and before each meal, as you're not going to eat in a dirty nappy, you also be checked before leaving house and as soon as you come in. You may come and ask if of your nappy removed if you want to use the toilet like a big boy. Each night you will wash by hand all the dirty nappies and plastic pants and then hang them on the line to dry. You will no longer be smacked for wetting, but you will be smacked if you making changing your nappy difficult. You will be changed even if we are out or visiting. To school you will wear the training pants and plastic pants. The rest for the time it will be the cloth nappies and plastic pants, or in emergencies while we are out the disposable nappies but still with plastic pants. The way I am going to deal with you now is to show you up. Hope that will stop you doing this. The rest of the day was uneventful. My nappy was hard to walk in. I more waddled than anything else. The plastic pants rustled and it was all very uncomfortable. After dinner that evening I washed all the nappies and 3 pairs of plastic pants and hung them on the line to dry. I finished around 8:30 p.m. Mum told me to go upstairs and fetch 2 nappies and a clean pair of plastic pants along with the pyjamas she had left on the bed. I obeyed and returned with everything. I tried to undress myself and Mum smacked my hands and told babies will be dressed and undressed by Mummy. I was put into a clean set of double nappies and the clean pair of baby rubber pants. Then she held out the pyjamas for me to step into and pulled them up. Once in bed I cried myself to sleep. The nappy made me hot and I couldn't close my legs properly. Next morning was a school day. I got up as Mum came into my room. She told me to go get breakfast. I did. Then she called me into the bathroom and get on the changing table, an old table with a large changing mat on it. After taking off my night nappy which was wet and dirted I showered. Mum then put into a pair of trainer pants but still with plastic pants on. Now she said if at school you want to use the toilet you can pull them up and down. I was then put into my school uniform. I got to school and felt like everyone was looking at me. When I came out of school Mum was standing there at the gate. We are going into town, she told me. When we got to town, I was taken straight into the toilets and into the baby changing area. Once on the changing table I was changed into a cloth nappy, and was praised like a baby and patted on the head for being dry all day. Then we walked to the shops. In and out of shops Mum bought 10 pairs of shorts. The lady in shop asked if we sure they would fit, so it was decided I would try them on. Mum decided they fitted okay. After a bit more shopping Mum said as I had been good we could go to McDonald's for a burger. We were in the queue and Mum said are you wet? I nodded. I was taken to baby room and changed. Mum folded my school trousers up and put in the bag and put a pair of the shorts on me. They made my nappy look even more obvious and the nappy showed between legs and you could see the nappy if I bent over. That's what you will wear out of school from now on. It will make changing your nappy and checking your nappy easier. Mum also bought a load of poppers and Velcro. When we got home Mum undid all the seams on the new shorts and replaced them with the popper studs, and all my pyjama trousers were done with Velcro right the crotch and down the leg. After my homework was done I was checked ready for dinner and again patted and told I was good for being dry. In the kitchen on wall was a large green sheet of paper with the days of the week and times throughout the day. That is your nappy chart. The smiley face means you were clean and dry and sad face means you were wet or dirty. Each clean nappy earns 50p, each soiled nappy you lose 50p. That is your reward chart. After dinner I washed all the nappies and baby pants and put them on the line to dry. I was then sitting watching TV when Mum came in and asked what the smell was. I didn't answer her. But she pulled me up off the floor and put me across her lap face down and sniffed my bottom. Why didn't you ask me to remove your nappy? There will be no TV for a week now. That is just pure laziness. I cleaned and changed ready for bed. Then sent to bed. Round about 11 p.m. Mum came in and checked my nappy and made me use the toilet. But I still woke up wet the next morning. I was changed into a pair of trainer pants and plastic pants for school. But today I had PE. I was scared what would the other kids say when I got changed. I got changed in one of the toilets and no one noticed I had got away with today, but that wouldn't work every time. The rest of day went okay, no one noticed. Once home I was changed out of the wet trainer pants and to my shock I was sat on a potty until I used it, then put into cloth nappy and plastic pants and shorts. This was new thing at each nappy change, I was to be sat on the potty until I used it. My day now existed, with nappy changes as when Mum said so. Then sitting on a potty and washing all the nappies and plastic pants. Then one Saturday morning I decided to rebel and of course live to regret it. Mum changed me into a clean nappy to go out in. I removed the nappy and baby pants and put my shorts back on, hoping she wouldn't notice. But when we were getting to go out, Mum noticed my shorts were wet and asked why. I didn't answer, so she grabbed and pulled my shorts down and saw what I had done. For that I got a good hiding before being redressed in a nappy, a pair of plastic pants. I was then told since I couldn't be trusted to leave my nappy alone in future while indoors or in the back garden, I would wear just my nappy and t-shirt so it will always been seen if I removed it. About an hour later Mum called me. "We are going out now," I was told. After checking my nappy, she held out a pair of shorts for me to step into and tired to take them from her and got my hand slapped. "Babies don't dress themselves." I stepped in them and Mum pulled them up. We had been downtown about 2 hours when Mum turned and said, "Have you wet that nappy?" "No," I said. "Well, let's go in there," she said and pointed to toilets. I ran off instead of obeying. When Mum caught up with me, she told I would regret running off, and took me by the hand and led me over to bench and stood me on it and pulled my shorts down right there in front of everyone. She took off the wet nappy and put a disposable nappy on me and pulled up the plastic pants and shorts. "You will be punished later for running off like that," I was told. "But in meantime you can hold my hand like a good baby until we find the baby shop." Once in the baby shop, Mum went and picked up a long strap-like thing and bought it. Outside the shop, Mum put one end round my wrist and held the other one. "Now you won't be able to run off again," she told me. I began to cry and was warned to stop, and remind I was already up for one lot of punishment when we got home for running off, and if I didn't stop the crying then she would go back in shop and buy a dummy to put in my mouth. When we got home, Mum took me straight upstairs to bathroom and ordered me up to the changing table. I obeyed and she removed my shorts and plastic pants and took off the nappy which was soaked. After cleaning me up I was told get down and bend over. I got 6 swats on my bottom, that is for running off earlier. I was then put into a clean nappy and plastic pants. Now while we are out, Mum puts the strap on my wrist and hold the other end. She always reminds me that humiliation is my punishment. Life has gone on like this for years. I am 14 now. I am still in nappies day and night, still not allowed to change myself. Most of my friends now know I have to wear protection and in the most part take no notice and treat as normal. Each morning I get up, Mum changes my nappy. On school day I changed into a trainer pants and plastic pants. On other non-school days I still have to use a cloth nappy with plastic pants. At home my nappy is checked every 2 to 3 hours and before going out. At bedtime I changed and during the night I am changed. In the most part Mum and I get okay, but she will still humiliate me if I misbehave or disobey. We were once at the airport. I was 12 at the time and we were sitting in the departure lounge. Mum pulled me off my seat and stood me in front of her. "Are you it?" she asked. I shook my head and tried to pull away. She grasped me tight so I couldn't move. I kicked to try and get away. So right there in front of everyone she told me in loud voice I was bad baby Timmy, then pulled me across her lap and pulled my shorts down. Put her finger inside my plastic pants. "Oh, we are wet then," she said, then gave me 2 swats with her hand on the back on my legs. "Now are you going to behave or am I going to change your nappy right here?" I agreed to behave. Now at 14 years old things are no better. I have not managed to stay dry day or night. Regular school couldn't cope with me, so although I am not special needs I go to a special needs school. I have regular lessons like a normal school, but most of the kids here are in nappies, for one reason or another. At home Mum now treats me like a baby. Or rather a toddler that can talk and know difference between right and wrong and truth and a lie. I am not smacked for wetting or dirtying my nappy. But I am if I misbehave or lie to her. Now each time my nappy is changed the routine is the same. Mum will ask if I am wet or dirty. If lie to her I get smacked. I only normally lie if we are out or have visitors, in hope she will take my word and not change me in front of anyone. I am still dressed by my mum. I am not allowed to choose what to wear or even dress myself. The shorts are still worn at home, but when out I now have jeans or tracksuit to wear, but the jeans have elastic waistbands so they can easily be pulled down. Mum will always use the same routine when my nappy is changed. The first question is what are wearing? I have to answer in a loud voice a nappy and plastic pants. The next question is are wet or dirty? Again I have to answer in loud voice. If I tell her I am clean and dry, she will always answer with "You not telling me lies, are you?" Then I have to stand in front of her so she can pull my trousers down, or if I am on shorts she undoes the poppers. Then puts her finger inside the plastic pants to check the front of the nappy. Then I have to turn round and bend over so can check my bum as well. If I need changing I told to go bathroom and get a nappy and a pair of plastic pants and changing mat and other nappy accessories. Once on the mat, she holds my legs up while pulling my shorts or trousers down, then the plastic pants, then removes the nappy and cleans me up. Then puts on a fresh nappy and plastic pants, and redresses me. If I am dry and clean I am patted on the head and called a good little boy. This is the same every time I am changed. My day starts at 6 a.m. Mum comes in and changes my nappy and dresses me for school. I leave for school at 7 a.m. as this school starts at 8 a.m. and finishes at 2 p.m. When I get home from school I changed again, then put to bed for nap for 1 hour. An hour later I am woken and changed again. Then it is homework time until dinner at 6 p.m. After dinner it is TV time if I have behaved myself for an hour. At 8 p.m. it is bath time and night nappy change and got ready for bed. 9 p.m. I am sent to bed. When Mum goes to bed she comes in and checks my nappy and changes me if needed. Weekend is much the same as weekdays. In the most I have grown to live with nappies and rest of that, but still don't like it. Mum in most part now treats me normally rather than like a baby. Nappy changing is part of life for me. Mum is more discreet now than she used to be, unless I play up or refuse to let her check my nappy. Then I will be spanked and changed in front of anyone who is around. The shorts have gone and I am now allowed to wear normal teenage clothes, which Mum helps choose ones that will hide the nappy as much as possible. Mum has worked out a reward system to try and get me out of nappies for night time. If I go 3 nights being clean and dry, she will leave off the cloth nappy and plastic pants and put in Pampers. If I go another 3 nights I will be allowed to wear trainer pants. After 3 more nights I can go without wearing any protection. However, one accident reverts back to cloth nappies and I have to start again. The same rules for daytime apply. I have managed on a few times to get as far as trainer pants during the day, but still end up back in cloth nappies and plastic pants. Night times I have not got anywhere. I still get frustrated with it all, and that normally means I play up and refuse to have nappy checked. That is the only time Mum will get angry and decides to humiliate me. You think I would learn but never do. We were at my cousin's wedding a few months back. I was in nappy plastic pantsuit. Mum had checked my nappy before we left, and I was dry. During the service I wet. Mum took me away after service and changed me. No one at this time knew or noticed. Then we were sitting eating at the reception and Mum looked at me and said quietly, "Do you need changing?" No, I answered, "I am fine." "Let's go and check, shall we?" said again quietly. I refused, so Mum took me by the hand and led me out with everyone looking. So looked back and said, "It is okay, I think baby is wet, I just off to change his nappy." When we got upstairs to our hotel room she pulled my suit trousers down, told me to lay on the bed. She then removed the plastic pants and the nappy and saw not only wet but had a dirty nappy as well. She was mad at me. After I showered and dried I returned to Mum. She put me across her lap and using the slipper she always carried with gave 6 swats on bare bottom. Then she redressed me in a nappy and plastic pants. I was then told put my pyjamas on and sent to bed for he rest the afternoon. Around 6 p.m. Mum came back to the room and woke me up and changed my nappy, and asked if I was going to behave if she let go back to party for evening. I agreed to behave but was warned if I misbehaved she pull me over her lap and smack me in front of everyone. I was told it had gone too late and then nothing more to drink tonight. Then she held out my dressing gown and told me put it on. Can't get dressed, I asked. No, we are only going downstairs, you can stay as you are, I obeyed. We went downstairs, everyone was very nice and didn't mention anything about earlier. I danced for a bit, then talked to cousins and Mum called me over. She held me close and checked inside my plastic pants. Good, she said, you are still dry. I went back and danced. My uncle bought me a glass of Coke which I drank and then remembered I wasn't allowed any more to drink, so I hoped Mum didn't notice, but it was too late. She called me. I went over to her and said, sorry Mum, I forgot. But it was too late. She undid my dressing gown and pulled down my pyjama trousers and smacked my legs 3 times. Then I was made to sit next to her for the rest of the evening. Around midnight Mum asked if I was still dry. I said I was dry. She checked my nappy anyway and it was wet and dirty. Mum took me by hand, telling everyone sitting near us that she had to take the dirty little baby upstairs so he could have his nappy changed. Once back in the room, Mum undressed me and removed the dirty nappy, then showered me. Once dried, I was ordered to bend over. I got 6 whacks, with the slipper 3 for being dirty and further 3 for telling lies. After returning from the wedding weekend, my whole life changed. Mum told me in the car going home. Baby Timmy had made her ashamed, and I was going to see ashamed Mummy was. First thing Monday morning, after the being bathed and put into a clean nappy and plastic pants, I dressed in shorts and t-shirt. Then taken downtown in the car. Once parked, we walked, or rather I waddled holding her hand. I was not given a choice. We went in the shop and out to the back of the shop where I was measured. Then the woman showed my mother a range of baby clothes, but huge sizes. Mum picked out 6 baby grows in all colors. Several pairs of new plastic pants and nappies. Several other things were picked out for nightwear and denim all-in-one suits for going out in. Then she moved on Rian's dummies and bottles. A large potty nappy changing mat. Then furniture, a cot and high chair and huge playpen. Then looked at me and said, this is all for you until you learn to be a baby. Until then you will be treated as a baby. I screamed at her and wished I hadn't, as I got smacked on the back of the legs. After Mum loaded all the stuff in the car, we went home. Once home, Mum affected the playpen and lifted me into it. And you can stay there till I am ready for you. Cried so she stuffed the dummy in mouth. I spat it out and got my smacked. Babies who cry need a dummy, I was told. An hour later she returned and lifted me out playpen and took me upstairs. My room had become a nursery. Cot and changing mat, dressing table full of baby supplies and shelves of nappies and baby plastic pants. Then she lifted me on the changing mat which was laid on the table, then held my legs up while pulling my shorts down. Hen removed my nappy and plastic pants which were soiled and wet. After cleaning me up, she put me into a clean nappy and plastic pants. Then dressed me in one of the new baby grows. Then back of the baby grow had pulled down piece so the nappy could be checked without undressing, and poppers where a zip would be so the front of the nappy could be checked. Then she pinned a dummy to me on a blue ribbon. Right, that is you ready for your nap. I was then laid in the cot and given bottle of milk. The cot side was put up and mobile hanging above played a tune. Must have fallen asleep as Mum woke me up and took me out the cot onto the changing mat. After checking my nappy, told me I was good baby for being dry. Was then put back in the playpen. I was allowed children's cartoons on the telly, as that is all babies were allowed to watch. Then came dinner time. I was lifted out the playpen and put on the floor and told to crawl over the changing mat that was on the floor. Once on the mat, Mum held legs and removed the baby grow and pulled down the plastic pants. Wet again, I see you dirty little baby. Once changed, I was made to crawl into the kitchen and then lifted into the high chair. With large bib round my neck, I was fed normal food but all mashed up like baby food. Started crying, so got the dummy shoved in my mouth. After dinner I taken upstairs and dressed and put in the bath. No longer allowed to wash myself. Mum bathes and dried me. Redressed into a nappy and pair of plastic pants. It was then back to the playpen. At 7:30 p.m. I taken back upstairs to my room, or nursery as it was now called. My nappy and baby pants removed, Mum pulled me over her lap and using her old slipper gave me 6 sacks on my bare bottom. That is for wetting and misbehaving today. She then told me to expect that every night before bed if I wet or dirtied myself or misbehaved, answered back. I was put back on the changing table while she put back into a nappy and pair of plastic pants, then redressed me into one nighttime baby grows. Then sat me on her lap and told me this is the new life you until you learn to act your age and stay clean and dry and obey her completely. Then she put me in the cot and hung the slipper on the wall as a reminder. Next morning Mum came in and took me out the cot and changed my dirty soiled nappy. Breakfast again, fed to me like baby. Then stuck back in the playpen till around mid-morning. After nappy change I was dressed into the denim dungarees, then put in the car. Once in town we got and put the reins round my wrist and held the other end. You walk nicely with me or else, she told me. Hen showed me in the boot of the car was pushchair. If you misbehave we will come back and get it and you will sit at it. Yes Mum, I said. Got my hand smacked and told you're a baby, you call me mama or mummy. After about 2 hours going round the shops, my mother sat on a bench, turned me round and sniffed my bottom. You dirty little baby, you have dirtied your nappy. She then took me to public toilets with baby changing rooms and changed my nappy. After a few more shops we went to McDonald's. After eating I was taken into baby room and changed again because I was wet. Then back to car and home. Was put in the cot for a baby nap with a bottle. I woke up before Mummy came up and climbed out the cot. Was about to leave my room as Mummy came in. So you still think it is clever to disobey, do you? Well, the slipper is not a reminder to obey. She lifted me on the changing table and went out the room, returning with cane like a garden cane with a hook handle like walking stick. She then removed my nappy plastic pants and gave me 3 strokes of the cane. Then put into a clean nappy and plastic pants and baby grow. Then put me back into the playpen. Fell asleep in the playpen, I think from boredom. Was woken and put on the changing mat. I was praised like a baby for being dry and clean. Then I was made to sit on the potty and told stay on it until I had used it. Again, once I had used I praised like a baby. Then redressed into nappy and plastic pants and baby grow. For being a good baby you can now walk instead of crawl. What do you say? I answered, thanks Mummy. By dinner time I was in dirty, so Mummy changed me. After dinner I was bathed and put into just a nappy and plastic pants. Sunday morning came. I was lifted out my cot and put on changing table and undressed, then changed into a clean nappy and plastic pants. Then dressed into a pair of denim dungarees. After breakfast, we went into town and Mummy did the shopping and loaded it into the car. Now we have finished with food shopping, we are going up the high street, she told me. Then she looked me up and down and said, are you wet or dirty? I answered no. You better not be telling lies. Then she undid the buckles on the dungarees and pulled them down to my waist, then slipped her hand inside my plastic pants. You dirty lying baby, you are soaked. She then took me in baby room in the public toilets and changed my nappy. Then she put me reins on my wrist and made me walk next to her. Once home I was given lunch and then taken upstairs and undressed, nappy removed, I was then washed. Before being put back in a nappy I was spanked with the cane for telling lies while out. Then put in the cot for a nap. Once awake, I was changed and put in the playpen. Then given new rules for weekdays and weekends. Was to remain in baby clothes at home every day before and after school and at weekends. Only Mummy was to dress me, change me and bathe me. I was to continue using the high chair, playpen and cot. Punishment for misbehaving, arguing and bad reports from school was the cane. For everything else either the cane or slipper, then sat in the corner facing the wall. Dummy reins and bottles to be used as needed. I was only to call her Mummy or Mama. In future nappy changing when out was to be in public, or she would at least let everyone know her baby needed changing. Potty training would start after school this week. Only a marked improvement in my attitude and behavior and staying dry and clean day and night would change this way of life. I was now a baby of 1 year old and would progress up the ages according to Beswitched. Samuel Matthews was a young 20-year-old man who lived in New York on Central Avenue, at Penthouse No. 13. Samuel was very slim and he had short blonde hair and blue eyes. He was always smartly dressed. He wore a different suit for every day of the week. He was surprisingly a male secretary. He was not very rich, but he cleaned people's apartments part-time. His current job was also part-time, so holding down 2 different jobs. To some extent, Samuel was happier doing his cleaning job. He even wore a white frilly apron over his suit, which made some of his clients mildly amused. A few were concerned that he may be gay. But Samuel always did such a marvelous and professional job that his small antics of wearing a frilly apron became an acceptable if but strange quirk. Samuel was right now at No. 32 of the penthouse block that he was a resident of. Mrs. Wilson was a nice, caring, wonderful old lady of 50 years old, and she found Samuel's antic of wearing a frilly apron most refreshing. "How has your day been, Mrs. Wilson?" asked Samuel in the most politest manner. Mrs. Wilson, who had wispy long white hair and cat green eyes, she smiled at Samuel. "Oh, my day has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for coming to clean my apartment for me. At my age I find doing even the most simplest of jobs difficult to do these days." Her voice was sweet and frail. Mrs. Wilson was the kind of lady who would make the perfect kind of grandmother. Surprisingly, even more so, was the fact that Samuel was the sort of guy that every girl would want to have. As Samuel was always polite, sensitive, kind, caring, considerate, eager to please others, the type that actually liked to do all of the cooking, cleaning, even the ironing, and Samuel was also the sort of guy every mother would want to meet and approve of. "It is a great pleasure to do a good job for you, Mrs. Wilson. That will be $5, please." "Only $5? Are you sure, Samuel?" "I am most definitely sure, Mrs. Wilson. You need the rest of your money for better things." "Oh, bless you, that is so sweet of you, Samuel." "You are most welcome, Mrs. Wilson." Mrs. Wilson smiled again at Samuel. "Please, dear, call me Sophia." "May I ask you something, Samuel?" "Yes, sure, Sophia, ask anything you like." "I do not mean to be too personal, but I am just curious. Why do you wear frilly aprons?" Samuel went red slightly. "Oh, I am ever so sorry, dear. I did not mean to embarrass you." "Oh, no, it's not that, Sophia. It's just that no one has ever asked me that before. My mother really got me into doing the cleaning and wearing frilly aprons from a very early age, so I just got accustomed to doing such work and wearing the frilly aprons." "Oh, you poor soul." "Oh, no, it is no bad thing, I can assure you. It helped me to respect women more, and so I now wear a frilly apron both in honor of my mother and out of habit too." "Oh, that is so nice of you. Do you see your mother often?" "Sadly, no, my mother died now more than 2 years ago." Sophia Wilson looked shocked. "Oh, I am ever so sorry to hear that." "It's all right, Sophia. I should have told you when I first began to clean your apartment. No, I really should not have pried." "It's okay, Sophia, I do not mind. Honest, I have good fond memories of my mother." "Oh, that is so good to know. You take care of yourself now, Sophia." "Ah, bless you, thank you, dear, I shall." Samuel left No. 32 with a smile on his face, knowing that he did a job well done and he was happy. But deep down inside, there was an unhappiness he kept pretty much to himself and well hidden from those he considered to be his friends. Samuel was pretty much a private person. He did not go out too much and he spent long and many lonely nights with none to keep him company. Samuel returned to his own apartment, when to his utmost surprise, there was a beautiful woman who was carrying a large box that looked heavy and to no 14 which had been empty for a long time. The woman was very strikingly beautiful. She had an hourglass figure to die for. She had surprisingly, however, very short brown hair, blue eyes. She even was wearing a t-shirt, blue jeans, and even a pair of men's sneakers upon her feet. The tight t-shirt and jeans really emphasized the woman's figure. Samuel immediately rushed over to take hold of the box that the woman was carrying, though he apologized first. "I do humbly apologize, miss, but you looked as though you could do with some help carrying this box." "Oh, why thank you, kind sir." "Oh no, not a problem." Samuel took the box from this strangely dressed woman. Why was she dressed in such a manner? If it had not been for her marvelous figure, this lady virtually almost looked like a guy. Samuel stumbled with the heavy weight of the box. He nearly almost fell over. The mysterious woman steadied him and took the box back from him with a smile on her face. She was quite strong, which simply amazed Samuel, as she carried the box into the apartment. "Do you need help with any of your other things?" "Oh, how rude of me. I have not properly introduced myself. My name is Samuel Matthews." "Thank you, but I think I can manage." "My name is Daisy Stevens, by the way." "Oh, it is a pleasure to meet you, Daisy. Are you sure I cannot help you in any way?" Daisy looked at Samuel with a smile upon her face, as Samuel had this look of an eager puppy on his face. "Ah, that is so sweet of you, but I can manage. But maybe we could meet each other sometime, have a chat, get to know each other." Samuel turned red with embarrassment. Sure. When would you like to do that then?" "Well, it is going to take me a while to settle in, so, say a week from today. How does that sound to you?" That sounds fine. Is there a place you would like us two to meet?" "Oh, yes, of course. How silly of me. Oh, I am pretty new here. Why don't you suggest a place?" "Oh," replied Samuel, going slightly more red in the face. "Okay, I know. We can meet each other at Crystal's Coffee Bar." "Oh, yes, I know where that place is. So what time would you like to meet me there then, Samuel?" Samuel turned even more bright red. "Oh, I do humbly apologize. I am the one that should be asking you that. Should it really matter who asks first?" "Well, it's the gentlemanly thing to do." Daisy Stevens smiled. "Oh, that is so sweet of you. Okay, you tell me the time and I will be there at Crystal's Coffee Bar for that time." "Of course, sure. How about 3 o'clock then?" 3 o'clock a week from today at Crystal's Coffee Bar it is then. I shall see you there." "Oh, it was nice meeting you, Samuel." Samuel blushed again. "Sure, and it was nice meeting you too, Daisy." Samuel then had a sudden no, which made him blush even more. "I am terribly sorry to ask such a silly question, but is Daisy really your name?" "Yes, it is." "Why, what's so wrong with that?" "Oh, nothing at all. I do apologize." "That's okay, apology accepted." Samuel turned and left feeling somewhat a bit of a fool. He walked away ashamed of himself. Samuel did not see much of Daisy as his 2 jobs kept him busy for a while, but one day to his complete surprise, Daisy was just leaving her apartment as he was. Daisy was wearing a dazzling sharp light blue 3-piece suit, a pristine crisp white shirt, a very smart and the most neatest blue tie Samuel had ever seen. The suit, however, was not a woman's suit. It was very much a man's suit. Even the shoes upon Daisy's feet were men's shoes, which were black and most chine. "Oh, hello, gosh, you look very smart," remarked Samuel, who went red in the face. Daisy smiled at him, and that's when he noticed Daisy was not even wearing any makeup either. "Why, thank you. You look smart yourself too." "Oh, thank you, and you are most welcome. May I ask what line of work you are in?" Just then Daisy giggled, smiling even more at Samuel. "Why, I thought you would never ask. I am the manager of Wick and Moon." Samuel looked at Daisy in utter amazement. Wow, you are the manager of the biggest New Age and Wiccan supplies chain store in all of America.
Yes, I am.
Why, does that surprise you? Well, yes, it does actually. By that I mean, Samuel became lost for words. I know, you are thinking that it is surprising that a woman would be the manager of such a big corporate business. No, of course not, Samuel managed to say. There is absolutely nothing wrong with businesswomen. I think it is marvelous that a nice beautiful woman such as yourself is the manageress of such a big corporate business as Wiccan Moon. Why, thank you. Oh, I am very much the manager. Oh, was all that Samuel could manage to say. May I now ask what line of work you do, Samuel? Oh, I work both as a part-time secretary and a part-time cleaner. I even do some catering too. Daisy smiled at him, her eyes widened. Wow, that is impressive. Say my apartment is in need of a good clean. Could you pop by tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock? I will be in then and busy at my laptop and I will absolutely have not much time to do any cleaning, etc. Samuel looked at Daisy looking nearly lost for words again, but he managed to say, "Oh yes, sure, I am free for then." Excellent. I will see you tomorrow then. Oh, we are still on for this upcoming Saturday at Crystal's Coffee Bar at 3 o'clock. Samuel's face turned red. He had almost forgotten about his date with Daisy. He mentally slapped himself. Oh, yes, of course we are still on for our meeting at the coffee bar. Daisy simply smiled again at Samuel. Great, excellent in fact. Okay, well I have got to go. I have an important meeting to attend to. I can understand that. Bye. Samuel watched Daisy go. He just could not believe his eyes. He then began to wonder what Daisy would look like in a dress and with longer hair, of course. His imagination easily made up the image of the perfect goddess of a woman if there ever was one. But just then Samuel felt ashamed of imagining Daisy in such a manner, wearing a sensual long flowing virgin white satin dress, strapless with an open back, showing off every inch of her curvaceous perfect hourglass figure. The day soon passed and the next day came to when Samuel turned up at Daisy's apartment at 1 o'clock dead on time. Daisy opened her apartment door to Samuel. She was wearing a nice sharp white business three-piece suit, a pristine and immaculate white tie and a pair of sharp well-polished white shoes. Again, these were all men's clothes, but Samuel felt it was not his place to say anything about Daisy's manner of dress. Then again, Samuel himself was also smartly dressed in a black three-piece suit. Well, punctual and smart. I'm impressed. You are, remarked Samuel, blushing slightly. Yes, I am. But I do hate to have to point this out to you, Samuel, but aren't you a little overdressed though for doing a cleaning job? Samuel blushed again. With him he had a plastic box that was much almost like a toolbox, only that it had inside of it all manner of cleaning products in it. That was in one hand and in his other hand was a black plastic clothes protector. There was a hanger as well, Samuel replied shyly. I have something to ensure that I do not get my suit all dirty. Oh, that is good to know. In that case, please come on in. Samuel timidly entered into Daisy's apartment. Samuel soon unzipped the black plastic clothes protector and removed the item that was inside of it, neatly hung up. To Daisy's mild amusement and surprise, hung on the hanger was a pretty pale pink frilly apron. She watched in sheer amazement as Samuel took the apron off its hanger with great care and attention, and then he proceeded to place the apron against his body and he perfectly tied an elegant tight bow around the back of him. Also inside the cleaning box there was a pair of pink rubber gloves too, which Samuel now put on. Bravely now he asked Daisy, "Where would you like me to clean first?" Daisy tried very hard not to look as amused as she actually was and tried to suppress a giggle too. "Oh, in the bedroom first. Oh, I had better show you where that is, if you will just follow me please." Samuel followed Daisy into her bedroom. Samuel felt embarrassed being there, but Daisy simply said to him, "I shall let you get on with your work then." "Yes, and thank you." "You're welcome." Samuel was the perfect gentleman the whole time he had spent cleaning and tidying up in Daisy's bedroom. In fact, Samuel did no differently than he usually does in his duties as cleaner, ironer, cook, etc. He was practically quite the perfect housemaid, only that he was in fact a guy. But Daisy could sense the inner sadness that was inside of Samuel, but she did not let on that she actually could sense this in him, and soon she paid Samuel for his work. Samuel had given the same care and attention to putting the apron back onto the hanger, as he had, when he had taken it off its hanger. Daisy watched him go. She was actually quite looking forward to her date with Samuel on Saturday at Crystal's coffee bar. That day soon came, but at 3 o'clock at Crystal's coffee bar, Daisy waited. To her somewhat puzzlement, Samuel was late. She had entered into the coffee bar and sat down at a table and had ordered herself a milky coffee. It was now 5 minutes past 3 o'clock. Daisy began to worry a little. She had a feeling that Samuel was not really the type of guy that would dare to stand her up on their first date. She patiently waited a while longer. The time was now getting to 3:30. Daisy got up from where she was seated. She was not cross or angry. She was actually more worried than anything else, and she soon turned up at Samuel's apartment. But there was no answer to the doorbell. Daisy went into her own apartment and she tried again to call at Samuel's apartment, but there was no answer. Now Daisy was really very worried. The next day came and Daisy was ready, wearing again a man's three-piece suit, and there was Samuel in his not-so-expensive three-piece suit. "Oh, good morning. Sorry I did not see you there," remarked Samuel most humbly. Daisy looked at him with the greatest of concern. "Are you okay? You did not show for our date yesterday at Crystal's coffee bar." Oh God. I am so terribly sorry. I. Samuel turned away, ashamed to even face Daisy. "I have no real excuses, Daisy, and I am utterly ashamed of myself. I simply got cold feet and I am a total disgrace. I would not blame you if you never ever wished to see or talk to me ever again." Daisy had suddenly approached Samuel and she gently turned his head with her hands to face her. "Hey, it's okay, sweetie. I forgive you." Samuel looked at her. He was almost speechless. You do?" "Of course I do, sweetie." Samuel looked at Daisy confused. The way she talked to him, it was not in the way of talking to a guy, it was more like in the way of talking to him as though he was another woman. But he said nothing about this, as he had acted so ashamedly and foolishly about his date with Daisy. "Thank you. Will you give me another chance then?" "Sure, sweetie, of course I will give you another chance. How about tomorrow at the same time and at the same place?" Tomorrow. "Yes." "Why, is that going to be a problem for you?" "No, it's just so soon. I am more surprised than anything else. Tomorrow will be fine. I won't let you down again, I promise." "Sure, sweetie, I shall see you tomorrow then, bye." Strangely, Daisy simply shook Samuel's hand and left. He scratched his head and then he headed off to work. The day soon passed and the next day came, and again Daisy turned up at Crystal's coffee bar. It was 3 o'clock precisely, but Samuel did not show up. Daisy waited and waited. She knew that something was wrong and she got up and left. But she was not angry, as strange as this sounds, and she would have every right to be angry with Samuel. She left the coffee bar and vanished. Meanwhile, Samuel was in a hotel room. It was a double-bed bedroom, but it was the only room available. He had taken it and he had been crying his eyes out, for he just could not bring himself to have his date with Daisy. Just then, there came a knock on guest room door. "Who is it, please?" he called out, trying to hold back his tears. "Room service," came a soft, wonderful feminine voice from behind the door. Samuel could not recall calling for room service, but his mind was all mixed up and so he called out, "Come on in." The door opened and a nice lady came in with a trolley. She was dressed pretty much like a male waiter. She turned to face Samuel. He suddenly stepped back in shock and disbelief. Daisy was stood before him smiling. She could see that Samuel's face was wet with tears. She approached him, but Samuel backed away from her, almost afraid. How did you possibly find me?" Samuel, I got worried about you, so I came looking for you. But no one knows I am here. I ask you again, how did you possibly find me? Asked Samuel, but in tears. Daisy tried to hug him, but Samuel backed further away from her. This worried Daisy very deeply. Hey, it's okay, sweetie, I am not going to hurt you. Okay, I was able to find you because I am actually a witch. What? You mean that you are a Wiccan? No, sweetie, I mean that I am the real deal. I am a true-to-life, true-born witch. By that, I mean that I have real powers and I shall show you. Daisy looked at the trolley. Suddenly it began to move all by itself right across the guest room floor. Samuel looked on shocked, but he looked at Daisy. He knew that he had broken a promise to her. No matter what she really was, that no longer mattered now to him. He suddenly broke down before her. I am so sorry that I broke my promise to you and not turn up for our date. I was just so scared. If Samuel had been any other guy, his excuse would have been rather pathetic. But Daisy understood Samuel's fear completely. She approached him, but this time, he did not back away from her. Instead, Samuel flung his arms around her and sobbed uncontrollably. I am so sorry. Hey, it's okay, sweetie, I forgive you, I understand, truly I do. You are so unhappy and you have been ever since you were a little boy. How can you possibly know that? I've already told you, I'm a witch. I know how to help you be truly happy, to fulfill a life that you have desired all of your life, but it has been a life you have not dared to live. I can give you that life, Samuel, set your soul free. How? I'm a witch, silly. Daisy suddenly lifted up Samuel in her arms and carried him over to the double bed. She placed him down upon it and then she began to take off all of her clothes. Samuel did not know what to do, other than being the perfect gent. He turned to look the other way. But Daisy sat down on the bed close to him and she took his head into her hands and turned it to face her. There is absolutely nothing to be ashamed of, sweetie. Daisy said ever so softly, as she began to slowly caress Samuel's shoulder blades, and his suit jacket suddenly dissolved into a fine shower of particles that simply faded away. The suit jacket was gone, leaving only the shirt and the waistcoat. Again Daisy slowly caressed Samuel, but this time all over the entire part of his waistcoat. It dissolved into a stream of particles also that faded away. Daisy caressed the shoulder blades again, and soon the entire crisp white shirt that was on Samuel dissolved into nothingness. Daisy now began to caress Samuel's bare broad shoulders. Daisy's caresses to Samuel's surprise were very sensual. His broad shoulders suddenly began to reform. They suddenly became much shorter and rounder, like a woman's shoulders. Daisy continued to caress the long manly arms of Samuel and they changed to long more slender arms to that of a woman's pair of arms. Daisy caressed each hand and all of Samuel's fingers until his hands became a woman's pair of hands. Samantha looked at Daisy confused. She simply smiled at her and said, "Oh, when marrying a witch, you my dear have to take my surname instead. Don't worry, sweetie, you'll get used to it. You are my lover now and forever." Strangely, Samantha did not object to this or being picked up again in and placed out upon the satin sheet-covered double bed. Daisy held her naked body up close to Samantha's naked body. Their breasts touched each other, and as Daisy made sweet love to her new lover, she knew that their relationship was the last macho man in Hollywood. Steve Oliver was lucky to be alive. One of the biggest actors in Hollywood, he'd been in a major wreck that had totaled his car and left him with a concussion, 2 broken arms, a broken ankle, and a cracked femur. He'd been home from the hospital for a couple of days, lying in a medical bed with his arms and foot in casts, and he kept reminding himself how lucky he was to have survived. It wasn't easy because he wasn't used to spending so much time lying down, and he especially wasn't used to being helpless. But that's exactly what he was, immobile and unable to use either of his arms. It was a very unusual and unpleasant feeling for a man who prided himself on his physical prowess. Steve was 43, but he was in better shape than most men half his age, his muscles large and well-defined. He stayed active, which kept him energetic and allowed him to land high-profile, high-paying action movies. He was a man's man, nicknamed the last macho man in Hollywood. But for the past couple of days, he'd had to rely on his nurse Leah and his 22-year-old son Blake for everything. With his arms in casts, he couldn't even feed himself, but the most embarrassing part was that he couldn't get to or use the bathroom without assistance. At 6'3", Steve was a large, heavy man, so a lifting system had been installed over his bed to help them. It consisted of pulleys, soft cuffs, and straps that could be fitted onto him at different points, adjusted, and repositioned. Whenever he had to use the bathroom, Leah or Blake would attach the straps and use the pulley to get him out of bed and into his wheelchair, where another lift would help them get him onto the toilet. Then, they had to pull his pants down for him and sit him on the toilet. He hated having to piss sitting down like a woman. Shitting was even worse because they had to wipe his ass like he was a little kid. The whole operation was a time-consuming affair that took planning, so he always had to let them know well in advance when he had to go. Of course, they also kept a bedpan around in case he was hit with a sudden urge to go, but he hadn't had to use it so far. He woke up with a familiar pressure in his abdomen, a full bladder after a full night's sleep. Leah. Blake. One of them was always close by to tend to him, so he knew he wouldn't have to wait long, and as usual, it was only a few seconds before the bedroom door opened and Blake walked in. "Morning, Dad." "Potty time?" "Yeah, and don't call it that," Steve replied. "It's just a joke," Blake chuckled. "Save the jokes and get me on the toilet. I really gotta piss." "All right, just hang on. Let's get you strapped in." Blake put the cuffs around his dad's calves and secured them with the strong Velcro. Then he pulled the handle at the other end of the line, raising Steve's feet into the air and locking them in place before attaching matching cuffs around his dad's armpits and pulling another handle. Blake then swung Steve around so his feet were at the side of the bed and pulled one of the handles, raising Steve's feet into the air, spread apart wide. But instead of grabbing the wheelchair as usual, Blake grabbed a pair of scissors. "What are you doing?" Steve looked somewhat amused, as if his son was making some sort of silly mistake. "Making things easier." The movie star now looked confused. "By cutting my shorts off me." "Aha." Blake opened the scissors and, starting at the hem of his dad's athletic shorts, cut them open all the way to the top. Tossing them aside, he did the same thing to Steve's boxer briefs, leaving his dad suspended in mid-air, totally nude. "Hey, what the hell? You just ruined a perfectly good pair of shorts and underwear." Blake smiled mysteriously. "You won't need them anymore." "Why not?" "I told you, I'm making things easier." Blake reached down and picked something up, holding it so Steve could see it, a large disposable diaper. "What the hell? I am not wearing that thing." Blake laughed. "What are you gonna do to stop me, big man?" The kid was right, Steve was helpless. Any other time, he would easily overpower his son and eat this. But, immobilized as he was, he couldn't do anything to stop his son as he unfolded the diaper and laid it under his ass. His heart starting to pound, he yelled out, "Leah! Leah! She's not here." "I fired her this morning," Blake said as he pulled one of the ropes and lowered his dad onto the thick garment, his legs still sticking up. "You what? Who gave you the authority to do that?" "You did. While you were still groggy from the painkillers, your manager Dave and I got you to sign paperwork giving me control of your care, your affairs, and all your assets. Everything is settled, and I'll take good care of you." Shocked, Steve didn't know what to say and could only wriggle and writhe in protest as baby powder was sprinkled all over his groin and ass. "Blake, please stop this. You know it's not right." The kid smirked. "I think I'm a better judge of what's right and what's not than you, and that's part of what this is all about, teaching you right from wrong." He brought the diaper up between his dad's thighs and taped it shut. "Damn it, Blake. When I get out of this, I'm gonna beat your fucking ass." "We'll see," came the reply as Steve was swiveled around and centered on the bed again, his body lowered and finally released from the straps. Steve wiggled and twisted, but there was nothing he could do. The diaper was on, and he couldn't get it off. And he really had to piss. Blake laughed. "You'll get used to that feeling, wearing diapers. You'll get used to using them too. This isn't funny. It is for me. You may want to let me know when you're done pissing." That was when Steve realized that he was going to have to piss in the diaper. He found the idea repulsive, but he'd slept through the night without getting up to pee once, so he really had to go. As his son stood over him, smirking and laughing, he held it as long as he could before letting go and feeling warmth flooding his crotch and running to his ass. He could feel the diaper bulking up as it absorbed his pee, his cheeks burning with embarrassment. When the flow finally stopped, he quietly said, "Okay. I'm done." "Good boy," Blake said in a cutesy, baby talk tone. "Let's see how wet you are." He placed his hand on the squishy padding and squeezed. "It's pretty soggy, but I think it'll hold at least one more wetting. This is a really thick diaper, after all. That's why I ordered them. In the meantime, you can meet your new nanny, and we'll talk about how things are going to be from now on." Then, raising his voice, Blake called outside the room, "Okay, Laurel." The name made Steve's heart jump, and his eyes widened as he saw her walk into the room. It was her, all right, young, blonde, thin, pretty, much like Blake. The fact that she was there looked really bad for him. Seeing his dad's expression, Blake said, "Oh yeah, I know all about what you did to her. That's why I know you're in no position to talk about right and wrong. It's also how I know you're going to be good and play along with all of this." She smiled down at him. "Look at you. Such a big, strong man, aren't you?" She laughed, enjoying the sight of him in the babyish diaper. "It took Blake a while to convince me. I didn't even want to talk to him at first. What was I supposed to think when my rapist's son contacted me? But when I finally understood that he knew what you did to me and wanted to help me make you pay for it, I was totally on board. Why wouldn't I want to punish and humiliate the man who humiliated me, who violated me and made me feel like shit? Now it's my turn, isn't it?" She held up her phone and took a picture. "That's a good one. Just so you know, Blake gave me corroborating evidence. If you're not good, I'll report you. So, you have a choice, diapers or prison. Which would you prefer?" Steve hung his head, ashamed, shocked, angry, scared, and hurt. Blake spoke out in a commanding tone, "Answer her, Stevie." "Diapers. I'll take the diapers." Blake and Laurel glanced at each other, smiling. "We thought so. Please don't let this get out," the star begged. "If it does, I'll be ruined." Blake grinned at him. "You don't understand. That picture Laurel just took. She's already sent it to a reporter." "What?" "No." "Oh, yeah. You released a statement through Dave this morning announcing your retirement from the movie biz. It said you've been wearing diapers ever since you got home from the hospital, and you like having other people change them for you, even your own son." He paused to enjoy the look on his dad's face. "That picture will accompany the article announcing to the world that Steve Oliver has left Hollywood to live his life as a baby." "A baby?" Blake's phone dinged, and he glanced at it, smiling even bigger than before. News gets around fast in Hollywood. They want to talk to you about the possibility of doing a reality series showing everyone how you're living now, going pee-pee in your diapers, drinking your baba, sleeping in your safe crib, and getting your diapers changed by your nanny and your own son. People are anxious to see the last macho man in Hollywood as the big baby you are now. In the meantime, we have another way for you to get some attention while making some extra money. We're setting up a website where people can pay to watch you on the cameras we're having installed, and we'll be auctioning off some of your used diapers. It may sound weird, but there are a lot of people out there who will want to see for themselves exactly how full Steve Oliver gets his diapers. I guess you could say you're changing jobs, Stevie. From movie star to professional diaper filler. As those words sunk in, the pressure in Steve's bladder, which had been filling up again as they talked, grew too great, and he started wetting again. The shock of it all hit him, and he started crying. His cries turned to sobs and even wails as his son lifted his legs into the air and began to change his soggy diaper. His pacifier was shoved into his mouth, and he instinctively started sucking it, knowing this was all he had to look forward to for the rest of his life. Sissy's graduation. I was coming down for my little brother's graduation and I had come out to my parents but they hadn't seen me CDD yet. So I decided to leave all of my boys' clothing home and just took numerous pairs of panties, bras, and enough pants, shorts, and skirts for the week or two I'd be staying. I also brought enough blouses and t-shirts for 2 weeks too. Well, the first night I was there we found out that the air mattress was popped, so what I decided to do was take out the unused crib mattress and sleep on the floor on that. In the morning though, I guess my mommy saw me on it, so at breakfast she asked me how the crib felt, jokingly of course but still embarrassing for me. I replied that it was fine, a little low to the ground but that's okay. So she asked me if I wanted to take part of the crib off and sleep on that kind of like an actual bed that night just so I was higher up. I said yeah sure with ease, so my dad took the back part of the crib off so I could stick my feet out over the end. Well, come morning I find out that someone had put it back on and locked me into the crib and I couldn't step over it or anything. I also had a binky in my mouth in the morning. A little while later my mom came in and let the side rail down and told me I looked really cute in my nightie and parkie in my mouth. So forgetting that the parkie was still in my mouth, I went down to breakfast only to have everyone point and laugh and say how cute I looked. My mom took me away from everyone later that day and asked me if I liked sleeping in the crib like a baby again, to which I replied yes mom. She then asked me if I wanted to wear a diaper to bed that night. I wasn't sure what to say, so I stammered I dunno, at which point she brought out of a picture from the previous night of me in the crib with the parkie in my mouth and said, now do you want to wear the diaper to bed? This time I immediately said yes, and she said okay. So I went through the day as if the conversation had never happened. A few of my brother's friends came over and one of them got the shock of his life when he started feeling up my legs and got a little too far and felt my penis and ran straight out of the house tee. So that night I went upstairs, took my shower. When I got out I pulled up a pair of panties and put my nightie and went into the room, having forgotten about the deal my mommy and I had made that afternoon. She was sitting there holding a diaper and some baby powder and told me to lay down. I did as ordered. She lifted up my nightie and pulled down my panties, slid the adult-sized diaper up under my butt, powdered me and brought it between my legs where she softly but firmly taped the sides. I have to admit it did feel wonderful. I was then helped into the crib where my binky was put into my mouth and I soon drifted off to sleep. I woke up the next day and felt the bulge between my legs and remembered that I still had a diaper on, and then felt the moisture and came to the sudden realization that I had wet the diaper in the night. I was horrified, but when my mom came in I told her so. She told me to lay on the ground again and she'd change me. She did so and brought me downstairs. I was put into a chair and started eating. Someone actually started helping me, and by the end of the meal people were actually feeding me. My mom asked me later if I wanted to stay a baby for the time was there or if she'd like me to stop. I said I would love to stay a baby girl and actually asked her to make me some baby dresses. She happily obliged and made the announcement that after the grad party I would be a baby girl for the remainder of the stay and maybe even longer, and then went and started making the dresses. The next couple of days were normal other than the fact that at night and in the mornings I wore a diaper and slept in a crib. After about 4 days though, my mommy finished the first dress. It was so cute. It was about 4 inches above the knee, so whenever I did pretty much anything my diaper showed underneath. It also didn't help that it was flared out at the bottom too. The dress itself was pink and had little teddy bears on it, and also had a big baby blue ribbon that tied into a big bow in the back. She also made some matching booties with rubber soles. When she presented it to us I was immediately ordered upstairs, and to be allowed to be diapered and changed I pretty much ran upstairs and was so excited until I saw that it was my brother that was going to be diapering me. It was very embarrassing, but I liked the experience and he did a very good job. He was gentle while undressing me, and the diaper he made fit perfectly nice and snug. He had some trouble getting the dress to zip button right and couldn't get the bow right, but when he was all done and led me downstairs holding my hand I certainly looked a picture. I didn't ever want to leave this state. I wet myself 3 times that day, and by the 3rd time I was barely noticing when I was doing it. It was getting so natural that I was starting to wet without paying attention. By the end of the week I was actually wetting myself and asked my mom if I could move back in as the baby. I quit my job, teaching music, sold my condo, car and all of my worldly possessions. It was all used to pay off loans and buy me adult baby clothes and thousands of bambino diapers. I was soon the family baby and was even talking as such. It is so natural, and I hope my parents never get sick of it and make me grow up again.